All right, so the goal for this video demo is to essentially take this network that I've sketched out here with the two different channels, the single ordering service, and 6 of these stakeholders, but we're just going to tamper with this one for now. So first things first, we've already entered the My Fabric network, which is the, one we're messing with. So I'm just going to navigate us there. So we're going to change directory into My Fabric network. So we see all these different folders in here. And the thing we care most about is the test network, because that's what the network we're going to be running is located in. It's again part of Fabric, and I've shown this in a previous video, so I'm just going to speed through things here. But first things first, I'm going to show you a bunch of scripts I've created. So these are scripts, all shell scripts that I've created, and the purpose is because I don't want to modify much of the sort of configuration code that Fabric already provides. We just want to build on top of that, and the things we only want to modify within Fabric are the smart contracts themselves that we want to write, right? So these are just sample scripts I've written. So we're going to start with up network, right? So if we go into my scripts and then check out what is happening in up network, I'm just running this command, which is to pull up the network with the CAs also. So let's check out Docker at the same time, so we have an idea of what's going on. So, okay, this is from a previous run, so you can see it's all exited for now because we have no networks up and running. So why don't we go ahead and, just so that we're running from a known initial state, bring our network down. And again, the way I'm going to show you what's happening there is I can just, it's messing up my GUI a little bit, but it's fine. So cat my scripts, and I'm going to run this script, which basically just kills the network and kills all the Docker containers. So we're just going to run that real quick. So /my scripts down network. Yes, I'm sure. So it's going to be stopping the network. Okay, so you see how this is all from a script I've created. All my Docker containers are empty now. The purpose of this is because we're now running from a known initial state. So let's clear out my terminal and let's up network, right? So we're going to call my scripts an up network. So, okay, let's focus on what all is being created right now. So we've created containers automatically for CAs of the 2 orgs and 1 ordering information organization, peer nodes for org 1 and 2, a order node, and a CLI node. Okay, and again, this is all done based on the code that is already provided to you by the Fabric or developers. So I haven't created any of these manually. These were all just given to me from the code already. So okay, so we see that there's a network up and running now that consists of these entities. All right, so revisiting the intended network we want to build out, we see that there's 2 channels, 1 ordering service, and these 6 stakeholders: raw material, textile, full package supplier, buying agent, third-party auditor, and retailer. Now, among these, we see that the buying agent and the retailer are connected to both channels. And so keeping this in mind, we can leverage the default setup of Hyperledger Fabric, because remember, it already creates these 2 organizations for you by default and a peer node from each. Why don't we just make org 1 the buying agent and org 2 the retailer? So the first step in actually writing some code here is we need to add organizations, and we also need to add them to specific channels. So these things need to be done in tandem. So we actually create channels and we add organizations as we create those channels. So again, here's where we are. We're inside the test network directory, right? Now, you'll notice that Add Org4 is not highlighted because it actually comes with Fabric again. So again, Add Org4 is a folder that comes with Fabric itself. So what I've done essentially just copied that folder and renamed it to Org4, Org5, and Org6. So I'm basically leveraging whatever tools we have provided by Fabric to add 4, 5, and 6, the other 3 orgs, right, from scratch. But in order to do that, the first step we have to do, again, I'm going to go open Docker and show you that, again, we only have peers from 2 organizations and CAs from them too. We don't have any semblance of a 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th organization, right? So let's go ahead and get started with that. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to first create a channel, right? And I'm going to use one of my scripts that I've created. Why don't I just open that over here? So here are all the scripts I've created, and one of them is to create a channel. So you can see I'm just going to invoke the script. So this one's called create channel. I'm going to invoke it, enter channel name. Let's call this, let's call this channel 1 because we're going from scratch, right? So channel 1. So it's creating this channel, adding orders. Now notice that for some reason it already by default adds an order, and it also adds the 2 default peers from each organization automatically. So it uses organization 1, then it uses organization 2 right here, and it sets a peer from both of those organizations onto this channel that we've just created, right? So channel 1 consists of, let's see, organization 1's peer and organization 2's peer and the order, default order. But the thing we actually care about is creating that new organization to bring into this channel. So let me clear this terminal out. Again, we only have 1 channel right now, right? And now I'm going to enter that Add Org4 folder just to see what it's about. So let's check it out. So here we have a bunch of things, again, provided by Fabric. And the first thing we need to do is generate the crypto material for Org4, okay? And in order to do that, we are going to create certificates and keys for the Org4 peer along with the application and admin user. Now, since we're using this example channel, which you can tell because it already sort of added peers from Org1 and 2, we're going to use the CryptoGen tool instead of using a CA. And the way we do that is through this following command. So we have to actually invoke it from here, CryptoGen, right? That's where it's gonna generate from, and the config is equal to org3-crypto.yaml. Now, what is this? Let's just check it out really quickly. This is the file I'm referencing, right? And it's simply the sort of configuration details for the Org4, and the output of which is going to go inside over here, which again is which folder? So we're in Add Org4, so we're going back, and this is the organizations folder where I want the output to be. Okay, so let's see what happens here. Let's see, I'm gonna run this, and specifically let's keep this folder open within organizations and see what happens. Boom, right there. You see it wasn't there before. It just generated the crypto materials for Org4 with this command that I entered using this CryptoGen binary, okay? This wasn't there before. Now we have some crypto material for Org4. That's all we have for now, okay? The next thing we're going to do is, once we've created the crypto material, we are going to use the config txgen tool to print out the Org4 organization definition, all right? We have to preface this by telling this tool to look in the current directory for the config tx.yaml file that it needs to ingest. Specifically, I'm going to just create a temporary environment variable. . right? Actually, let me copy this command. Okay, just copy this command really fast. Just a second, I'm gonna copy this right here. Okay, so what's going on here? What's going on is this above command creates a JSON file, org3.json, this one right here, okay? And writes it to the test network folder, specifically this folder here, which contains the policy definitions for org3, the node OU definitions for org3, and two important certificates in base64 format, which is the CA root cert and the TLS root cert. So now that we have all these things, we are going to add org3 to the channel by appending this organization definition to the channel configuration. Okay? So in order to do that, let me actually pause the video right. So actually, now that we have generated the org3 crypto material, why don't we bring it up the peer node for org3? So again, I'm going to bring out my Docker, and you see this is what I have so far, right? Let me bring this to 1/2 of my desktop. So, okay, let's see. We've already generated the crypto material. We've got the YAMLs for the compose. So why don't we build out a peer? So let me clear this. Let me just hide this for now so we get more space. And this command, since we're using Docker and we already have built these files, why don't we run it? So we see the error is listed as this, and I forgot that I ran into this bug before, and the way per Stack Overflow to solve it is just exporting this temporary environment variable. So once we have that and we rerun this command, and keep an eye out over here, right? Boom, we have our peer node created for org3 based on the crypto material that was generated and all that stuff. So cool, it's up and running. Now we have a peer, but again, this peer is not part of any channel so far. It's literally just created with nothing to do right now. Okay, now that we've basically brought up a org3 container, a peer node container for org3 right here, why don't we go ahead and make peer nodes for org4, 5, and 6? And in order to do that, of course, recall that org3's directory was already provided to us, which means all these components were provided therein. And all I've done so far is copied that directory and renamed it to 4, 5, and 6. So currently, this exactly matches the contents of Add Org4 because this is written by the Fabric developers, and we've seen it clearly work, right? However, it only works for org3, but that means I need to modify whatever content, all the content there is inside here, to match org4, org5, and org6 respectively. And in order to do that, I'm going to try a very hacky way, which is essentially just leveraging my IDE and finding and replacing whatever unique text there is amongst these components to match org4, org5, and org6. So the only two things I can think of to find and replace are any mentions of org3, A, and B, the actual port number that the peer nodes run on. So in this case, the peer node is running on 11051, okay? So let's just see what we have going on here. So we're gonna copy this path. We're gonna use that as, we wanna look in all the files that are in that directory. So first, let's see how many mentions there are of org3 itself. So there are 210 mentions, but let's be more specific because, I think case matters here. So first, let's see how many lowercase mentions there are. There are 138. Now let's see how many there are with the first 138 plus 65. Okay. Plus 7. So So all those numbers actually sum up to 210, I'm pretty sure, right? So we know that we have to replace these 3 different cases, and let's see what else we have to replace. We have the port number 11051 reserved for the peer node of org3. So let's see, 11051. Let's see where all that's mentioned. Right here. So let's also change that, you know, to a different port number. 11051 to 11051. Okay, so we're going to change those two. So far, all we're going to do is we're going to go into each directory 4, 5, and 6 that I've created on my own and find and replace all mentions of the org3 number and the port number. So let's go ahead and do that first with org4. So the first thing we're going to do is find all the matches of the lowercase of org3, and we're going to replace it with org4. So that's 138 things we're changing straight away. So let's go ahead and do that. Yes. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is change these 65 mentions just like this. And the final thing we're going to do is all uppercase, which we're going to change just like this. Okay, so now let's see how many mentions we have of org4. Boom, 210. So just like we used to have for org3, we now have those mentions for org4, and I'm sure they're divided equally based on the case, just like they were for org3. But another thing we have to change now is the port number itself, right? And how do we pick which port number to change it to, right? That's a good question. Okay, so the port number, I'm just gonna do a random thing because these are already pretty high up. So why don't I just replace them with just 22052, right? So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. Find and replace. So let's see if there's still any mention of 11051 around here. There's nothing. Okay, so far we've pretty much changed almost everything there is to change, except for the file names themselves, right? And so why don't we go ahead and basically rerun the commands for org4 that we ran for org3 to, you know, include org4 into, you know, our Docker list. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to now enter org4's directory, cd cd add org4. Okay, so the first thing we did was we entered, okay, and then let's just do the same thing. So we had an eye out. This was the first thing we added, right? With this command, right over here. That's the first thing we did. I'm just gonna copy that again, and I will paste it, except this time our config is org4. So let's see if that works, but it might not because it needs to use, you know, we need to rename these. org4, where is it? It is generating add org4, generate config org4. So this file right here, org, I'm going to rename to org4.crypto.yaml. Let's just cross our fingers. Okay, that worked. At least that worked, right? That worked so far. And then the next thing we did was, which step? If I go back far enough, it was building the crypto material, right? So let me just go back real fast. Now that we have this, I will basically copy that same command I used for org3 bring it in here. So wherever we see org3, we're going to change that. So pure organizations. So now we're caring about org4.example.com. Inside there, we're going to create it as org4.json. And the org we're print org is, again, 4. Right? Okay, so we created the JSON for org4 as well. And now the final thing I have left to do is bring it up in Docker, right? Just the way we did for org3. So let's bring up our Docker desktop GUI and keep an eye out and cross our fingers to make sure that you know, we see org4 pop up. And again, renaming wherever, because I'm only renaming the files that we're actually using in our command line. So we let's just rename those real fast. So Docker compose, so we're in Add Org4, and then we're inside the compose directory. So I'm going to rename this file right here to org4, and I also have to rename Docker and then Docker compose org3. I have to rename this one too. .yaml. Okay, so I've renamed these, which means this should work, hopefully, if this Hacky Way works. Let's go ahead and do that. Run this. Would you look at that? We created org4 from the Hacky Way. And let's wait for it. Okay, it's working. Cool. All right. So you can go ahead and assume that I'm going to follow these exact steps for orgs 5 and 6. And if that works, in the next, very shortly in this video, you will see peer0.org5 and org6. So let's see if that works. Okay, so you can now see I have peer nodes for not only orgs 1 and 2, which came by default, but the newly added org3, the one I showed how to do the Hacky Way org4, and the ones I did the same way as added org4, org5, and 6. So we now have all the necessary organizations ready to go in our network. And you saw how I built them from scratch.